Welcome back to the channel. My name is Justin Bone. Today we're going to be talking about how to bowl on a short oil pattern. We're going to be giving you guys 3 tips today with a bonus tip as well at the end, so stay tuned for that. You won't want to miss that. And just a disclaimer before we get started, this is just a general rule of thumb and my gather of information from all the great people that I've been able to talk to in the sport of bowling. If this doesn't work for you, that's okay. It might not, but it's going to be a general rule that works for a lot of people. So let's get right into it. So starting with the lane graph, today we're bowling on the 2023 Team USA Trials Men's Day 5 pattern. These tips do apply for any short pattern. This is just the one that I picked for the example today. So things to look out for. First thing that we're looking at here is the distance, 36 feet. That's going to be this number right here. That's going to tell you the length of the pattern. Anything less than 37, if this number is less than 37 feet, it is going to be considered a short oil pattern. The next thing that could be a useful tool to look at is the volume oil total. That's the total amount of oil on the lane and the total amount of volume that's on the lane. 25.74 milliliters for this pattern. Really gives you a good general rule of thumb of how much they're going to hook, how much surface you want to use. That's something that you'll learn a little bit more as you simply just bowl on patterns. Next thing we're going to be looking at is the overall shape of the pattern. Now there's 2 spots that you could look at it. You could look at it here, or you could look at it down here. I personally like to look at it down here because I can really see where the hold is and where the friction is. You can see down here, there's a little bit of a ramp on this side and a ramp on this side on the left side of the lane. This ramp is probably going to be about where you want your break point to be. And the last thing that could be a good thing to look at is the ratio. This number right here is going to tell you basically how hard or how easy they are going to be that day. The higher that number is, the easier they're going to be. So anything less than 3 to 1 is going to be pretty challenging. This pattern, 1.58 to 1, going to be pretty flat, going to be pretty hard to create room on. But hopefully with the tips that we're going to give you throughout the rest of the video, it'll be a little bit easier. And while we're on the subject, if you're in the New Jersey area and want to come practice on any pattern of choice, not just a short pattern, Bones Elite Training, Howell, New Jersey, any pattern you want, just $10. RevRates.vip, and it'll be down below. So now moving on a little bit more to the bowling balls that you would be using. So I have a typical 6-ball arsenal that I would bring to a tournament here on the rack right now. I'm going to be going through why some of them would work well and why some of them wouldn't. So the first ball that I'm going to be referencing is the urethane ball. This is going to be the ball that you're probably going to use on most short patterns. It's going to give you the most overall control. It's very low in differential, which means it doesn't hook a lot left to right. If you want to learn a little bit more about urethane bowling balls, I just recently did a video, the link will be down below. Check that one out for a little bit more information on urethane. But that'll lead me into my next ball, Troublemaker. This ball is a little bit of a higher differential, so it might not be the best option, but it could be if they do get really tight down lane. Urethane tends to make patterns really tight down lane. So if you need something that's a little bit stronger, Troublemaker, symmetric piece, could be a really good option. Next, moving into the shiny symmetric option. I have the sensor on the rack right now, but a lower differential shiny ball could be really good when they do break down, if they do break down a lot. I wouldn't expect it to be too much in play. When you're bowling on the short patterns, you want your ball to hook in the front and be really smooth down lane, and the shiny balls overall, whether it's the shiny symmetric or the shiny asymmetric, are just going to hook a lot down lane, and they might not be the best, but there are times that they could come into play. Next, moving into my shiny asymmetric, this probably isn't going to be the ball that I use hardly ever. They'd have to get really tight down lane and hook really early for me to get into something like this. And to be honest, you're not going to see that unless everybody in the field is using urethane. Next one, strong asymmetric ball. I have the Brunswick Mindset. This could be something that could be useful if urethane isn't in play. If they are still really tight in the front and really tight down lane, that could be a good option. There are a couple of pros that will take balls similar to this, stand a little bit further left and throw it at the gutter and bank it off of it. I wouldn't really recommend it. I would still go with the urethane one, but it is another potential option if they are really tight overall. This ball could also be really good for the higher speed players if you got a little bit more ball speed and the urethane ball doesn't quite hook for you. A strong asymmetric or a strong symmetric could be a really good option for you. Last one, plastic ball. Believe it or not, this one could actually be in play. If you're a slower ball speed player and you have trouble keeping urethane online, plastic ball could be a great option. Some of those weaker options as well that are even below a urethane ball could work for you if you are one of those slower speed players. All right, That's enough talking about bowling balls. Let's actually watch them go down the lane. So moving on to our third tip, lane play. On the short pattern, we saw on the graph that further to the right looked really beneficial. So we're gonna start with ball of choice, purple hammer, the urethane ball. We're gonna start further right and see what we're working with. So you can see that was a pretty good guess. Got pretty close to the gutter, still hooked, controlling the back end of the pattern. That's what we like to see on a short pattern. Bonus tip, open your ears. Rule of 31. If you ever heard of it before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you haven't, you're gonna learn it right now. Rule of 31, you take the distance of the pattern, which in this case is 36 feet, subtract it from 31, and that will give you an ideal break point that you should start at. 36 minus 31 is 5 in this case. So we're gonna be further to the right, which tells us that if you're on a 46-foot pattern, rule of 31 says you're gonna be closer to 15. It means you're gonna be closer to the head pin. Rule of 31, good general rule of thumb, if you're on a longer pattern, you're probably gonna be closer to the head pin. If you're on a shorter pattern, you're probably gonna be further to the right. Rule of 31, bonus tip. And a little bit back to the rule of 31, if you are a lower speed player or a more rev dominant player, that rule of 31 is probably gonna be a little bit further to the right. If you're a lower rev player or a more speed dominant player, that rule of 31 could be closer to 32 or 33. It could be a little bit left of that break point. So in this case, if you're a higher speed player, you could be left of 5. If you're more rev dominant, you could be right of 5. So some people might ask, why am I gonna start with the urethane ball and why not one of the other balls that I had in my bag? The urethane ball is a solid cover stock. What that means, it's going to hook earlier and be more controlled down lane on the fresh. That's exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for the ball to hook before the end of the pattern, and the urethane ball is going to give us that. On top of it being a shorter pattern, there's more overall hook, the urethane ball is just going to allow us to be further to the right. Now some might ask, why wouldn't you use a shinier ball? Well, I'm going to show you an example right now. So shiny ball, the exact same spot. You can see that one hooked quite a bit off the end of the pattern. It looked like it got to the end of the pattern and literally got kicked. Because it doesn't want to pick up in the front, that ball is just going to hook too much down lane. Want to use the solid covers on the short pattern. So let's say that urethane ball is taken out of play or you don't have one in your bag yet. I would go to the symmetric solid option in your bag. In this case, the DV8 Troublemaker. I'm going to stand a little bit further left of where I was with the urethane ball, since this is going to hook a little bit more, but still trying to get it right of 5 at the break point. Wow, first try, that was pretty good. So you can see, compared to the asymmetric shiny piece versus the symmetric solid piece, that one picked up before the end of the pattern and didn't quite hockey stick as much off the end of the pattern. You're looking for that smooth back-end reaction like the Troublemaker just gave me. Alrighty, recapping everything that we just talked about. The first thing we talked about was reading a lane graph. That can be a good thing to look back at if you're ever lost when you get a fresh pattern. Second thing we talked about was the arsenal. I recommend a urethane ball for everybody on the short oil patterns, but if you are one of those higher speed players that needs something a little bit stronger, a strong symmetric or even a strong asymmetric solid option could be something good for you. Last thing I talked about was the lane play, the actual of throwing shots. Being further right is going to be something that's going to be really beneficial for that short oil pattern. And in general, if you need your ball to hook a little bit earlier, use a little bit more surface on your ball. 360, 500, or 1000 is a really good starting point. Use your best judgment to make the best call for you and your game. That's going to wrap this one up. I'm Justin Bone. Hit that subscribe button, like the video, and we'll see you next time. Peace.